best could be. I haven't seen my Super Nintendo since 2003. That's alright, I don't mind. I've got a Switch in the old switcheroo. My friend Mike and Jaymo too.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Play along on our epic quest to research and review all 250 plus games in the Nintendo Switch Online Retro catalog. Today we are quivering our way through Kid Icarus on the NES. I know you like that one, Mike. In an episode we are calling I Put on My Robe and Eggplant Wizard Hat. Mike,
Oh, there's so many layers of deep cut on that.
I think it might be my sketchiest title yet, Akis. What do you think, Akis?
Oh
Oh
God.
God. Well, I think it's important to contextualize that Kid Icarus is a game that I don't, or a character that I don't know of as a game. I know Kid Icarus before this entirely through my introduction through Captain N, that I stumbled upon like 20 years ago for like $5 in a DVD bin somewhere in Australia. Had never heard of it before, stumbled onto it. And then, of course, that same process more recently led me to stumbling onto the Still Loading podcast, which for about 2.5 years, I think, did a full watch through of the series. And so I'm very pleased to bring on Josh from the Still Loading podcast and Dexter, who did all of that with him.
Yeah.
So Josh, if you would like to explain what it is you did, why, and what the rest of your podcast is, go for it.
Why is a very good question, and I don't fully understand why. I don't fully understand it myself. Well, so yes, hello, my name's Josh. I'm the host of the Still Loading podcast. I've been doing the podcast for a good while, and what really was the impetus for doing the Captain N rewatch series? Like we watched every single episode. We would devote an entire episode of the podcast to an episode of Captain N. We released them once a month over the course of 2.5 years, just because we didn't want to burn people out listening to just like basically like 3.5 months straight. Actually, sorry, there's how many episodes? I'm already blanking. There's like 24 episodes. So that would be like, that's a lot of months in a row of just straight Captain N. There's more than 24, but it's approximately like 24, 28-ish, something like that. In any case, so I didn't want to like group them all together. And right when we started the series, Dex and I started the series in 2021. Dex and I we podcasted before. I invited him on to talk about video game history, as well as he had a book that he was trying to kickstart, which Dex, I know the Kickstarter didn't end up working out, but if you want to talk about that after I throw it over to you, I think that might be an interesting topic too. So it was the spring of 2021, and I had just become a father. I was brand new dad, and I was trying to figure out a way to bring my show back weekly, because up until that point I was bi-weekly on the podcast for like 6 years or so. And then I went weekly in the summer of 2020 for the first time ever on the show. And I really liked how it felt, like that sense of like busyness almost. So I was trying to find a way to bring it back, but I didn't know how to manage the time being a new dad and everything. So I decided that I would do 2 full episodes a month and then 2 mini episodes a month, something that I wouldn't have to do a lot of prep for, or like whether it's playing the game, whether it's researching for it, just something that I could literally just throw something on and just laugh at it for like 40 minutes to an hour. And that's when I pitched the idea to Dexter, because Dexter and I had talked about Captain N prior. I thought it'd be really fun to do a rewatch of a video game cartoon. And we ended up coming into agreement on Captain N. And I was like, Dex, I really enjoyed podcasting with you. Why don't we do this together? I think you would be perfect for it. You like animation. You're an illustrator. This would be a really good mix. And then Dex agreed. And I still don't know why he agreed, because now he's stuck with me. It's been, what is it? We started in 2021, Dex. So it's been 4 years of us podcasting on a monthly basis, doing some type of a video game cartoon. Because after Captain N finished, we moved over to the Super Mario Brothers Super Show and the Legend of Zelda cartoon. So that is the impetus for why we decided to do this. But actually, Dexter, I don't know why exactly you agreed. I've never actually even asked you what possessed you to take on this stupid idea with me.
I think I've got a little extra information on this because, yeah, Josh had reached out to me through mutual friend Game Dave, I think is what started it all. And after you had Game Dave on, I think you and he had a conversation, and my book Kickstarter had come up, and I think and then of course you becoming a father.
Actually, he retweeted it.
Okay.
He actually retweeted it back when Twitter was actually not a fascist site. Yeah, so he retweeted it, and I was like, oh, this is really cool because I mean, I don't want to like completely derail your story. So, but that's how I actually found you. He didn't even bring it up. He just retweeted it, and I thought your project was cool.
Awesome. Yeah, and so yeah, that was kind of the connection, how that was made. And of course, I was excited to do any kind of promotion for the book. And kind of long story short, if I had known a little bit more about what I was doing, since that was my first Kickstarter, it might have been more successful. But I do plan on trying to get back out there with it.
Did you explain what the book was? I don't know if I did. Did we miss that?
No, I'll try to do that right now. The book was called. Now I'm blanking.
I know the title if you want.
Is it yeah, go for it. I know I'm blanking on it.
Mr. Miyamoto makes video game history.
Mr. Miyamoto makes video game. Yeah, I think I couldn't remember because I bounced a few ideas around for the title, and now I couldn't remember which one it was. Okay, so Mr. Miyamoto makes video game history. Like Josh, I am now a little bit more veteran dad at this point, because that first episode that we recorded to promote the book came out on his first birthday, and now he's almost 5.5. So it shows how long we've known each other at this point. But we had a blast recording that, promoting the book. We kind of connected on our interest in game history, our interest in being video gaming dads, and kind of just stayed connected that way. Came on again for some other video game history conversation. I actually got my master's degree in art and design by doing my thesis on video game history preservation through comics and illustration, storytelling, those sorts of things, which is, that's kind of what spurred my idea to do the books because, being a dad, my son still to this day, he loves reading. He loves reading books. And I didn't want to be, I had a military father and he never pushed giving me a crew cut and making me do push-ups in the morning. He never pushed that on me. And I didn't want to do that to my son with video games. Like, here, drop and give me 20 minutes of Mario. I didn't want to do that to him. But he likes books. So I was like, let's do some video game books. And there wasn't really any video game history books, especially for like little kids. And so that's where that idea came from. And so since that's kind of what I do outside of teaching art for a living is making my own art, I came up with the idea to do the book. And I still would like to continue working on that and getting that off the ground, but it's kind of a side thing at the moment. But yeah, so that was kind of that. And as far as Captain N, I do remember, Josh, that you had put out for a Q&A episode of your show. You had put out like a call for questions. And so just for fun, I posed the question, who would your Captain N team be if you got sucked into a video game? Like, what characters would you team up with?
It's a fun question. I love that.
I think that's what kind of triggered, like, wait, Captain N, like, this show, like, this is so bizarre. Let's, does anybody still remember this? Let's rewatch it. Because it's always been a huge, and I don't think it was until we started doing the show and rewatching it and talking about it that I was like, oh my God, this show had a huge impact on me becoming an artist. Now kind of reflecting on it.
Yeah, the art style is really cool, and seeing these Nintendo characters kind of represented in ways before the iconic looks had been figured out.
Exactly.
So Mike's been talking about this. I mean, I remember seeing Mike's DVD of Captain N, and we never got around to actually watching it. So I was like, I gotta watch this because these guys have this hilarious podcast. I listened to your one covering Zelda Sing for the Unicorn. Really taught me what a horn dog Link used to be. Like that one's really rough. So then I'm booting up Captain N, and like it makes such a weird first impression because they show this map of video game land, or no, excuse me, video land.
Yep.
And it's like one land is called Castlevania, one land's called Metroid. I'm like, that's not even a place, that's an enemy type. And then Mega Man zooms past and says Mega High. And so I literally pause it and go, I'm too sober for this. Like I gotta pause this and revisit it. But Mike, you've loved Captain N for a while. Like, what's the appeal? Because I didn't really get it.
I don't know. I mean,
Is it just cringe fun?
No, I'm going to say that. I think I have authentically enjoyed it.
Okay.
I think something helps. I know the DVD that I had, I think is the thing that hooked me was on that DVD that I picked up for cheap. And it's like episodes of Captain N and also episodes of Super Mario. And there's just something about like, yeah, we're going to go into the world of Tetris and everyone's just bricks. And I'm like, I can't believe they did this and they just kept going with this.
Yep.
We need Tetris people.
Maybe there's something that I just am drawn to anything that is someone is sucked into a video game, which is, we talked about this when we did Kid Chameleon. That was a really weirdly popular concept for like 5 years of TV and video games and the movie arcade. Like all these different things, like we're just going to pull someone into a video game. They got to deal with it.
Well, it's a truly wacky show. So anyone who wants to, find out more about it, Still Loading has a ton of content on it.
I mean, there more content than any rational person would ever put out on Captain and the Game Master. Fun fact: you brought up Tetris World. Do you remember what the mayor of Tetris Town or Tetris World was? Mayor Squaresley. Why do I remember that? I don't know. Now, Mike, quick question for you. Did you grow up with the Captain N cartoon or was it something you found later? Because so Dexter grew up with it a little bit. I came to it like afterwards. And so I'm curious for you, did you grow up with Captain N or was it something you kind of came to as an adult?
I was an adult when I stumbled.
Okay.
Very old. Yeah, would have been legally an adult at the time that I found it. And it would just, I watch very weird things. I think it's the like movie TV equivalent of someone who just cannot identify that food's gone bad. And so it's, yeah, that looks interesting. We're going to watch this. And sometimes that works out well and sometimes it doesn't. But there's no like, I've never heard of this. I'm going to pass. It's like, that looks weird. It's $5. I'm going to buy it.
I can understand that mentality. I was gonna try to like give you an out and say though, we're like, I watched it as a kid because I mean, if you think about it as a kid, this would have been the first time that you saw not the first, but one of the only times you ever saw some of your favorite video game characters on TV that wasn't part of the game, right? Like Simon Belmont didn't appear in another cartoon. I mean, maybe there's some Castlevania stuff that I'm not aware of after Captain N until, the Netflix show. But like, Kid Icarus, sorry, Pitt. His real name is Pitt, as we're going to talk about when we get to the actual game. Captain N has warped my brain to a degree where I can't refer to Kid Icarus to Pitt as Pitt. He is always Kid Icarus to me because I've watched too much freaking Captain N.
See, I'm in the reverse thing. I did not have exposure at that time. I had never really had exposure to Castlevania or Mega Man or Kid Icarus as games. And so like when we played Castlevania for the first time, like what I am imagining is Captain N's Simon Belmont in that game.
That's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This vapid like surfer bro.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah, so it's and it's because I grew personally, it's like I grew up with a mom who didn't like video games that much. So I had my dad's old Atari, and then I had my exposure to video games at other friends' houses, and Jaymo had Genesis predominantly at that time. So it's like I hadn't really seen a lot of the games that show up in here.
Yeah.
So like it's completely, or also like Metroid. So again, like playing through Metroid for the first time, like there's a part of me that's disappointed I couldn't get far enough to get to Mother Brain, but there's also a part of me that was going to be disappointed because it's not going to be the right Mother Brain in my mind.
It's not going to be Levi Stubbs.
Yeah, not voiced by Levi Stubbs, famously of the Four Tops.
Yeah.
I watched episode 106 wishful thinking because it seemed Pitt centric. It's the one where he wishes to be larger.
Yes,
Oh
that
my
was the one
gosh.
with Stephen Reese. I think we had Stephen Reese on that one.
Is he the genie?
Yes, we were.
No,
Oh,
Stephen Reese was the guest on the episode.
Sorry.
No, it's all
I
good.
thought you meant he was in the show.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the snake toilets. I was hoping that we would be able to talk about that at some point, which happens in that episode. We noticed the snake shaped, like they looked like, was it like urinals or like hanging off
It
the wall?
looked like
And
a
then-
urinal with a snake in front of, like on top of it, like it was a freaking I can't even remember anymore. It looked like a picture of a snake on top of it, and I don't think you're gonna find because we're the only ones that have referred to it as that. If he brought it over, Stefan actually tweeted about it once again back when Twitter wasn't a fascist site. And he actually tweeted about it because, like, after we recorded that episode, he was hung up on it for like another day, just dwelling on the snake toilet. And he tweeted about it afterwards. I could probably find it if his Twitter account is still up, but I don't want to go back on there. But it's funny.
He ended up discovering that it was supposed to be like, we think that it's supposed to be like the pots that spawn the snakes in the NES game, and that's how they visualized it in the show. Which, I mean, judging by the strange the strange filter, yes, the the pots that hang from the ceiling and drop the snakes, the weird filter that this show had, that's what it had to be for these weird snake toilets that they were jumping in and out of in the show.
Yeah, which I didn't realize those were snakes until I was watching someone else's like recap of the Kid Icarus franchise earlier today. I just, in my mind, those were ducks. I think it's because they appear to have wings, and so I'm like, yeah, some like ducks or some other bird that I don't know why they don't fly. And it's like, okay, there's snakes with possibly wings. I'm like, that doesn't make any more sense necessarily.
So when we get to Duck Hunt, are you going to think of them as snakes? Like, is it just going to flip your perception all around?
No, because those are much more clearly ducks. These are more like, I'm not fully sure what these are. That was where I ended up.
All right, guys. Well, without further ado, I think we have some sacred treasures to recover. Are you guys ready to come in with us into the pit room?
That was
The bottomless pit room.
that was a good callback to our Zelda show episode. Thank you.
I was proud of that one.
That was a good callback.
All right, well, let's get into it. Kid Icarus, released for the NES in 1987. As described on Nintendo Switch Online, the evil goddess Medusa has stolen 3 sacred treasures and imprisoned the goddess of light Palutena in her evil plot to control all. Play as Pit, a young angel who has been entrusted with a magical bow and arrow. Fight against hordes of enemies that swoop from above and below. Secure the 3 sacred treasures from their evil guardians, equip them, and face Medusa in the final battle. Are you the stuff of legends? Restore peace to Angel Land and prove your worth. Let's go ahead and take a look at the box art since I was off in people's first impressions. North American box art is done in pixel art sprites, which was the style at the time. You have Pit jumping from the left side of the frame over End Explosion, I think. And he's about to land on a bush, I think. And above him, there's ice on the ceiling, maybe. And he's being attacked by something. What is happening? What are we looking at, Josh?
Well, I mean, you got me, but I do think it's worth noting that this was the second, like the box art in an interesting sense represents, like, this game represents a pretty big shift in NES games at the time. And the box art is a visual representation of that, because up until this point, you had the black box NES games. You know, your basic. A lot of them were just kind of ports of arcade games, but then you also had, you know, Super Mario Brothers as well. But most of them were very simple games. They were very arcadey, a lot less story driven, a lot less kind of like games that were clearly designed for the arcade experience that they brought to the home in some way, shape, or form, or at least designed with arcade sensibilities, right? Kid Icarus, even though it was the last to come out when came out in Japan, it was the first brought over to North America. It was the kind of a it kind of was a symbol for like what the NES would become in terms of game design, and you can see that even they decided they could tell. It almost seems like they could tell based off this because the box is different. It's like, the black box series, that was our first series. The silver box stuff, that's our next ones. And that's where you get around the same time this came out, you also get Metroid and you also get The Legend of Zelda. So this was like a very big step forward for Nintendo at the time. And those were all like obviously first party games, and there's other third party titles that came out as well in 1987. But like this one from a Nintendo perspective was like the beginning of the shift of to more console style gaming experiences. And Kid Icarus was the first to do it. And it's kind of crazy. You can even see that just with the box art itself. It's like the same style as the black box stuff, but now there's just some minor changes just to give you a semblance. And they also give you an idea of what's to come. And they also put that, that password pack notice on the top left corner of the box, which is one of the first times you saw that in the NES. I think it is the first time in North America. I believe this was the first game from Nintendo that had a password for the NES. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I mean, I know Mike's always excited to see that because, Mike doesn't use modern functionality. So anytime he's like, okay, some way to save your progress is probably pretty huge. Dex, what do you think of the Japanese one? Because we got just a much more kind of animated one. It kind of looks like Pit is drawn in sort of Sunday morning funnies kind of style. I like this one better. Do you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I also, if I remember correctly, the reason why they did a lot of that pixel art for the original like Black Box and even this adventure series was because of the United States with the video game crash. Part of that they blamed the quality of the games, and for those that may or may not remember, the box art for Atari was like these gorgeously rendered paintings, like baseball, and it's like this beautiful painting. And when you play it, it's just bark, 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 like little blocks. And so people were buying these games and like, it's not what this game looks like at all. And so kind of Nintendo's thing was, nope, we're going to show you exactly what this game looks like, and it's going to blow you away, and it's amazing. And of course, back then in context, those were very bright and vivid colors and really nicely done. Like the graphics are great. But yeah, how can you go away from that awesome illustration style? I don't think we would have gotten the character design that we did in Captain N if we'd gotten this box art. I love the that kind of stumpy look. Stumpy, which got popularized by, from what I understand, Akira Toriyama, R.I.P. He kind of popularized the chibi style, from what I understand, the big head, tiny body, and you still see this kind of style popular today. But yeah, you can't go wrong. I've always been attracted to kind of that cartoony style. I love the nice thick outline, really nice color. It gives I feel like this is almost more exciting. It's sort of been more exciting to me as a kid. So like, oh, what's this game about?
I also think it kind of conveys the game kind of has a sense of humor because it's a bit more of a playful art style. It's kind of cartoony in its nature. And Mike, this is how he's drawn in the manual.
So yeah, this drawing, because it's just like him in the sky, really makes you expect that he's going to be able to fly, which I think is a reasonable assumption on multiple levels here.
Yeah.
I mean, he flies at the end of the game.
Yeah, I was going to say that for the Joy-Cons there, Grumpy Gus. We'll get to that. Well, so let's go over the development of the game. It was developed and published by Nintendo, directed by Satoru Okada. We enjoyed his work in 2 episodes ago when we covered Metroid. And Mike, you're a fan of his boundary-breaking puzzle game, which was...
Kicks.
Kicks, can't escape it. This thing's freaking haunting me on this podcast. Kicks has this weird through line with a lot of great game developers. They all worked on this game, and I got it for Mike on the eShop. Well, I got him a gift card he could use on the eShop, and it's just not a good game. But According to Nintendo Dream Magazine, issue 118, Kid Icarus was originally designed to be a dramatic action adventure with a more serious tone, but after objections from the development team, several more humorous elements were added, such as the infamous Eggplant Wizard, the credit card power-up, and a giant sentient nose enemy that is meant to be a playful jab at lead composer Kurokazu Tanaka. No disrespect to the man, I think his work on Metroid is a genius, but I kind of see the resemblance. Did you guys know that Spec Nose was a jab at this game composer?
I did not actually.
I did not know that. Yeah.
That poor man. The legendary Hip
He-
Tanaka, they did him dirty.
I feel like he was in on the joke. I don't
Probably.
know. Yeah.
Although I am glad that they decided to add Eggplant Wizard, because that's a whole arc that I think we'd all be missing out on if they hadn't done that.
If they did not put Eggplant Wizard in this, we would totally miss out on the best character from Captain N. Arguably the best villain in Captain. Mainly just the best line in the entire show is from episode 3. You know what I'm talking about, Dex, when he turns King Hippo into a salad?
Oh, yeah.
Where he goes, King Hippo's trying to squeeze through this tight, this tight hole to get through so they can chase after the end team. And he's like, "Oh, I can't fit." He goes, and Eggplant Wizard goes, "Nonsense. You just need a little lubrication." And he turns him into he starts like chanting a rhyme, and he turns King Hippo into a salad. He's like, lettuce is green, tomatoes or something, tomatoes are red, turn King Hippo into a salad head. And he gets like a crazy weird design lettuce is coming out of his hair. And then King Hippo goes, "Hey, this doesn't look like lubrication." And then he squirts salad dressing on top of him, and it's very uncomfortable, the sound effect in combination with the overall look. And then they just jam King Hippo right into that hole. That's all you got.
You're gonna get us delisted here, Josh.
What are you
Jesus.
talking about? I didn't say a single word that was offensive.
This was all a children's show.
This was on. I am describing, Jaymo, what happened on a children's cartoon.
Fair.
You were saying we needed more sex in the show.
There you go. Well, okay. So, we're going there. Okay. Episode 106, when everyone's getting their wishes, Eggplant Wizard wishes for some sexy strawberries. And Mike,
Tomatoes.
are they tomatoes? I guess they're not
Tomatoes.
tomatoes. Okay, yeah, Mike's like, calm down. They're tomatoes, buddy. But Mike, that was very Spanky's quest coded to me. The legs on those tomatoes.
Yeah.
The
And
show is
Eggplant Wizard,
so
he's got a
nuts.
family too. Yeah, we get to
Oh,
see
yeah,
a
he has
picture
a-
of his wife and kids, and
And the kid's got a knife.
he's got a knife behind his back. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this show's wild.
It was the voice actor for Eggplant Wizard that you had on, right?
I had King Hippo,
Okay.
Gary Chalk. Gary Chalk was the voice actor
the
for
other
King
half
Hippo.
of that pair.
Yep.
You also had Wiley on an episode.
Yes, I had Ian James Corlett on the podcast, who was the voice of Dr. Wily, which is funny because he would later go on to be the voice of Mega Man in the official Mega Man cartoon, or one of the Mega Man cartoons in the 90s.
Fighting robot.
Mega Man.
Yes, that one.
Well, let's get back to Kid Icarus. In the same interview, the director revealed that in order to meet their deadline, staff members would often work overtime and even sleep in the office using cardboard boxes as beds and curtains as blankets because the office building lacked central heating. The final code was finished and the cartridge entered production a mere 3 days before release, which has to be some kind of record. I'm a procrastinator, but that's even pushing it by my books.
That's wild.
Right? 3 days between the final code being finished and then it starts. Like, I can't imagine how stressed everyone was. And then finally, perhaps the game's most famous brush with pop culture relevance occurred when Mario is seen listlessly playing the Kid Icarus game in the 2023 animated movie. Pitt's dramatic death declaration, "I'm finished," is meant to mirror Mario's depression at his failed plumbing career.
I mean, what are you talking about? It's clearly his biggest point in pop culture history was Captain N, the Game Master. Obviously,
Right.
He's got a point.
Sorry.
where they even got his name not correct.
Maybe it's not him. Maybe Kid Icarus is canonically someone else. So Before we get into the Joy Pros and Joy Cons of Kid Icarus on the NES, what is our history with this game and how far do you each get? Dex, can we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I actually have memories of, the same era. I was watching Captain N, playing it on a demo kiosk. I don't even think it was an official kiosk. It was like a television setup with an NES at a KB, or no, it was a Kitty City is what it was. Kitty City toy store. Every time we would go, obviously I would peruse the video game aisles. But near the front of the store, they had just a little CRT set up with an NES plugged in behind the counter, so kids couldn't, change the games or anything, but you could demo these different games. And that was how I was able to play Metroid the first time, how I played Kid Icarus, how I played Castlevania. Um, these games the first time was at, Kitty City. I would just kind of hope there was a game I would like to play. And boy, let me tell you that Kitty City was like an upside down mirror world to me, because between Castlevania and Kid Icarus, with hearts not being life, was so strange to me. Like currency and weapons, like I was so confused as a kid why these Kitty City games were different than the ones I had at home. But that was my first kind of run in. And beyond that, I would say probably the last time I played Kid Icarus was on the NES Classic.
Nice. Yeah, we're very nostalgic for those days of kiosks and, physical games. And I don't know, this is sort of like a little relic out of time in some ways. For me personally, my only prior experience playing as Pit was Super Smash Brothers. And even then I was never very good with him. But, thanks to abusing the rewind feature on Nintendo Switch Online, not only Nintendo did I beat this game,
Nintendo! Family computer!
but I also used the oft forgotten SP mode to get the best ending. Josh, have you beaten Kid Icarus? What was your experience?
Never beaten this game. That's it. Ugh. My experience with this, game is very minimal. I've played it before. I've tried to get through the first level, but the controls are very floaty. Sorry, I'll save my thoughts for a lot of the gameplay specific stuff till we get to it. But my experience is very minimal. I first heard about it kind of similar to you, Jaymo, through Smash Brothers. And I think that's like a lot of gamers of a certain age. Like I was born in '89, so I technically could have played the NES growing up. Like I would have overlapped with it at the tail end of its years. By the time I started, would have been able to play games. But my parents didn't really give us a lot. Like we didn't really have a lot of games until I was 10, which would have been like well after the NES life cycle was over. So I missed out on the NES initially, so I didn't get to play it as a kid. So I didn't know a lot of the NES classics, your Castlevanias, your Metroids, your all that other stuff. Or I did know about them like as like their GameCube versions or their like whatever the current Nintendo. Like perfect example, Donkey Kong 64 is my first Donkey Kong game. And I had no idea how much of those character designs were based off of the Super Nintendo game Donkey Kong Country. So not to go off on too much of a tangent with that, but like I had no idea about Kid Icarus until Smash. Or that's when you see Pit as a character that you can play as. I'm like, yo, what's this? What's game's this guy from? I've never even heard of this dude. And I had a lot of friends who were big into games. Are like, oh, he's actually on the NES. He has a game called Kid Icarus. I went, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And didn't really touch too much of it. I do remember there was a YouTube channel called Player Piano, which got a little popular for a little while. And then they kind of got not too big, but professionally their lives just kind of split apart. It was a pianist and a videographer, and they did really high quality versions of like high quality videos, of this professional pianist named Sonia, and they would do like different songs and with crazy custom pianos. But they did one where they had Sonia listen to NES music and then try to transpose it over to this. And I remember hearing the Kid Icarus one on there and be like, oh man, that doesn't sound that great to me, because like but then you heard her arrangement of it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually a nice melody. And we kind of were robbed of that over here in North America. As a quick side note, the game was originally released on the Famicom Disk System, over in Japan, which had an extra sound channel. So you actually would get more depth, more depth to the arrangement than you did here in North America, which only had 3 sound channels. And over there, it had like 4 or 5 or something like that. And also, if you later games had different cartridges that like different chips in the cartridges that added even more sound channels, like Konami added a bunch. Konami was big into like sound chips on the NES back then. So yeah, my experience was that it's more from a historical look than actually like having a lot of personal experience with it. Which the last fun fact that I want to shout out that I don't know when I'll be able to fit it in any other way. This game was one of the first games to use the MMC1 chip on the NES. The way MMC stands for memory mapper chip. And so there's a bunch of different MMCs, like Mario Brothers 3 had an MMC3 chip, but the MMC1 chip allowed the game to scroll in 2 different directions, which previously it could only do one. You could only have the game scroll vertically, or you could only have it scroll horizontally. This game does both, not at the same time, but it does both. You'll have side scrolling and you'll have up and down. The MMC3 chip is the one that allowed it to you to do both at the same time. You could scroll vertically and horizontally at the same time, which is why Mario 3 has that. Kirby's Adventure is another game that uses that chip, that kind of thing. So the MMC1 chip was a big step forward because that's what games like Metroid also work on, where it scrolls horizontally or vertically. So
huge.
Yeah. That's about all I got, though. Just more from I appreciate it from a historical perspective more than actually enjoying playing it.
I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that because I've been, a lot of these games we're covering had Famicom Disk System releases, and I've been wondering, like, well, how do they make that work on a cartridge? It never occurred to me we're getting inferior versions than what they had in Japan.
So in Japan there was a save feature on the Famicom Disk System. We didn't get the save feature over here. We did obviously on the original Legend of Zelda, where they had to figure out the battery backup system, the battery backup to save it. But until then, they relied on passwords, which if you've seen the passwords for this, it's like 20 digits or like 25 digits or something like that. Or 24 digits or something like that.
24.
It's 24 digits. Yeah. So it's 4 groups of 6 digits each. And so 24, and you would have to write it all down, though there is a lot of weird like codes you can type in to get like invulnerability and whatnot. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff with this game.
So Mike, how far did you get and what was your history?
So we kind of covered no history of this as a game, and platforming is definitely not my thing. So I started off with this, and I think I played somewhere between like an hour and a half, and couldn't get beyond the second level. And I hit a point where I'm just like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong about this. Did not understand it.
Second level or second stage?
Stage, I guess.
Okay.
I guess it'd be level and stage. Yeah, second stage.
Did the game ever start scrolling horizontally for you?
No, I didn't get to that. Whichever is less progress, that's what I had.
Gotcha.
And so I actually did what I've done with a lot of these, which is I'm going to go check out a speed run. And especially Games Done Quick is really good for having someone describing like what's going on. So it's not just watching someone play. They've got a commentator explaining how the game's working or how the game would normally work. So Fruit Bat Salad had a speed run that I'm watching. I'm like, oh, to get where I did, I kind of sped through because when I was actually trying to kill everything on screen, I was dying kind of a lot. And it's like, oh, the power-ups are tied to how much you're killing. I may have got myself in trouble here because I've gone far in and like, I'm not going to get anything because I just avoided stuff. So I went back to try it again. I'm like, okay, now I know what to aim for, and made less progress than before. So
you didn't get very far.
No, not at all. Like I've seen the ending only from watching the speedruns. So actually, this does bring up one of the things that I found amusing here, which was like I put down notes about wishful thinking, not because I intended to rewatch that episode of Captain N, but because the difference between like the most basic ending and the best ending is in the good ending, Pit becomes big.
Yeah.
And it's like, That was the Captain N wish.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
See, I saw him becoming Man Icarus.
Ah.
Well, well done, well done. And also, Palutena lays him lays a wet one on him. You're a hard out Link, right? Link never gets the kiss, but actually, at the
Well,
end,
Link doesn't deserve it.
at the end of Zelda 2, he gets the kiss actually, but you don't see it because curtains drop.
I don't think anybody counts that for multiple reasons.
Hey, justice for Zelda 2. Dex, me and Dex like Zelda 2, right? Dex, you know what, Dex, you don't need to say anything. Let's just move on. So you guys might be, amused to find out that in North America, we had one extra good ending where like little cupids will actually rain hearts down on you and Palutena. And in Japan, there was an extra bad ending where Palutena turns you into a speck nose for taking too long. But if we can jump into the joy pros of this game, I wanted to mention what Josh had said about this MMC1 chip allowing different ways to scroll the screen. I like that this game has some variety in it because at the first 3 stages you're rising up from the underworld, and so as Mike mentioned, it's a vertically scrolling platforming challenge. With like the wraparound Pac-Man physics, where if you leave the screen on the right, you'll appear on the left. So there were some fun, like kind of puzzly moments where I had to use that to my advantage. It was a little disorienting because like your projectiles will not pass from one side of the screen to the other, just your character models and moving platforms. But then once you rise up, you will also then be going horizontally in like a kind of what we think as a traditional side-scrolling game. And then at the end of every 3 stages, there is a Zelda-style dungeon where you are picking which door you want to take out of a chamber and having to map your way through it to eventually make your way to the boss. So I don't know. I mean, when Josh said this game was important and showed an evolution in the complexity and of an NES game, it's no longer just 2 little shapes shooting at each other. There's going to be a sense of a journey now. I kind of felt that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, I've never beaten this game, but I've watched playthroughs of it and done research on it. Like this game has a lot of it. I actually have been saying this fairly recently on my own show. Like I admire games that take swings, and this game took a lot of big swings, especially for the time that it came out. They not only do they mix up gameplay styles. You have vertical scrolling, you have horizontal scrolling, and you have exploratory, single screen Zelda style exploration, like you mentioned, Jaymo. But it also has like light RPG mechanics where you can find different power ups, and based on your overall score determines like what your attack power up is. And by getting a certain high enough score, you can go into like an area, and then you'll have to face like a test. And if you succeed in the test, then you get an upgrade of some sort, or maybe your strength will be upgraded. There's also different items that you can do that are either single use power ups or permanent effect power ups. There's a lot of depth in this that I don't think is really well broadcasted, which we'll get into the Joy Cons. But in terms of pros, like it is very ambitious in what they're trying to do, and in a weird sense, I mean, Jayma, correct me if I'm wrong. There's only 4 stages in this game. Sorry, 4 levels, and there's 3 stages in each. Or what is it?
There are 4 different levels. You're right. First 3 stages has you climbing out, and then you get to a fortress and fight the Cerberus boss, I believe, the 2-headed dog boss.
Mm-hmm.
Then for the next 3 levels, you are now scrolling horizontally left to right. 3 stages of that, and then another fortress where you fight I think the blob, or actually I think the snake is second. And then you have another vertically scrolling section, but now instead of rising out of the underworld, you are climbing the clouds to your final fortress where you fight the 3rd boss, and then, as I think you mentioned before, the final level of this game, which you get to jump to using SP mode, is a 2D scrolling flying shooter. And it's actually almost disorienting because now you can fly in front of objects that used to be platforms to you. They're now backgrounds, and so it definitely took some calibration. But I was like, wow, like for a game this old to have this much gameplay variety felt huge.
Yeah. I'm glad you clarified, because in my mind, since I've skimmed through the playthroughs, I watched some of the bosses, and like you, Mike, I watched a speed run of it, more in the background. Like it was hard for me to really tell. Like, I thought it would be like a vertical section, a side scroller section, and then the dungeon section, but it's straight vertical for the entire first stage, and then obviously the exploratory section, and then straight horizontal for the entire second stage or level, and then exploratory section, and then back to vertical on the third one. But that's really interesting. It mixes up the gameplay enough throughout it, and it doesn't. There's a trend in NES games at this time where they would like the whole kitchen sink approach, right? They just threw everything at it. Like, look at games like Adventures of Bayou Billy, where they have a side-scrolling section and then a shoot 'em up and like a light gun shoot 'em up style section, and then a car driving section. And they're just like, we're just going to put every gameplay style under the sun in here, and you're going to find something you like. And this game, it switches it up, but it all still keeps the overall general mechanics, right? Like, they're not completely changing up gameplay mechanics. You're still playing as Pit with his kind of floaty physics, and you still are playing as him. The gameplay mechanics for the most part change or stay the same. Excuse me. It's just they change depending on the type of camera scrolling. So they change the camera scrolling to keep it feeling fresh. The only time they really change up the gameplay is in the final stage, which is a shoot 'em up, like you said, JMO. And what's weird about Kid Icarus is that it's like an inverse difficulty curve. It's freaking insane in the beginning of the game, but as you get power-ups, everything becomes much more trivial. Not entirely trivial. The platforming is still really challenging, but in terms of combat, you're able to take out enemies much more efficiently as you continue to get power-ups, and the game becomes a lot easier as you go along, which is usually obviously different than most games. Normally they get harder. This game is opposite.
Yeah, I think one of the things the speedruns have said was like, has this high barrier to entry, and they're like, actually, like, if you can get to about 1-2 or 1-3 and you're killing enough things, that's where you have enough points that you get another bar of life. And it's like, which is basically your life doubling at that point in time. It's like,
yep. When
you get to that, then it's like that seemed to be the crest that I was aiming for. I'm like, if I can get that, I think everything else most of the rest should follow. And I could not. And I hit a point where I'm like, I am not going to torture myself for it. But like, that was what I was aiming for, was like, if I can get to that and kill enough things, I'm like, I can get past that first bit and start to get the benefits of the power-ups and see if I can then coast down that difficulty hill on the other side.
I do think, and maybe I'm giving the game a little too much credit, but I do think it's kind of cool from a storytelling perspective, because, I remember the Hercules Disney movie, and like, he starts out as this scrawny little kid, and then zero to hero, and now you clobbering the Cerberus and everything, right? And it's like, in most kind of RPG games, enemies are leveling with you, so you're kind of have an even ramp of difficulty. But like you said, this game gets easier, well, because Pit's getting stronger. And so I kind of felt like I was becoming, as Dex said, man Icarus by the end of this journey. And I enjoyed, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I really liked the cast of enemies in this game. There's 40 different minions. Some of my favorites, if I could just give some shout outs. There is, as Josh mentioned, these different ways to get items. You can survive this like kind of danger room style challenge where they just throw a bunch of metal at you and you just got to dodge it for 10 seconds. One of them, my favorite ones, is the let's make a deal room, where it's just a room full of question mark vases and you get to pick one. And rewinding, I love that room, because if I didn't get the prize I wanted, I just rewound. But one of the possible things in the pots is the god of poverty, who takes away all the prizes you've gotten. Is there a more 2025 phrase than the god of poverty?
You want to talk about 2025 phrase? There's a credit card you can get at this game, and you can go into debt if you want to talk about 2025.
There you go.
There's 7 pages of items in the manual. Like, there's a part of why I'm annoyed I couldn't get further is I'm like, just going through the manual, like, there's a ton of stuff in here. Like, not just a bunch of enemies. Like, there's a ton of items that all work in different and interesting ways. And I saw none of them.
Well, did you see some of these other enemies? Because, like, I think, Mike, big day for adult switcheroo. I think this is our first moment of full frontal nudity. The sirens are fully exposed, apparently, in the manual.
She's showing something, that's for sure.
She's showing, if you got it, flaunt it.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have Josh and Dex here for the first time that nipples are directly relevant to the episode because you guys are experts.
On
This gives a
nips?
whole new meaning to spread eagle here.
Oh God.
Dun, dun. There we go. There's the delisting. Thank you, Dex.
She's got wings.
She sure does. She sure does. Mick is also a Rolling Stones reference, the big lips and the tongue, like the Rolling Stones logo. Eggplant Wizard. Are we talking about Eggplant Wizard? Because I mean, we kind of touched on it already, but what a dastardly design, but also kind of fun because it doesn't actually hurt you; it just wastes your time.
Yep.
And when he turns you into an eggplant, now you got to run back to, as they call it in the manual, the hospital, which is weird. And then Mike, you know the little story there because you read the manual. Komados, right? The Komodo enemy. You read about that one.
I mean, I did,
Which
but I
are
don't
definitely
remember it.
not Metroids.
Totally not Metroids. Even though
Definitely not.
Same dev team and listed as coming from another planet. And I guess in Kid Icarus for the 3DS, they make a joke about this.
Well, in thinking of Metroid, when you turn into an eggplant, when Kid Icarus, sorry, Pit, gosh dang it, when Pit gets turned into an eggplant by Eggplant Wizard, aren't the legs Samus's legs?
Oh my God, are those Samus's legs?
They look like Samus's legs from Metroid.
They really do. Well, I'm looking at the sprite of Pit in my background, and it is the same sprite, just different colors, but definitely Metroid colors for sure.
Okay, so Pit has knee pads.
I mean, he does. Look, he's got little leather straps on. I'm looking right there, right? He does. It's weird. It's weird. Maybe they reused some assets from Metroid. I'm totally with you. So I think my favorite moments in this game were the boss fights. Mike, so you didn't get to a boss fight?
I did not.
Oh,
This game is hard.
It's hard. It's hard. But did you notice that throughout the game you were collecting hammers, little red hammers?
Mm-hmm. Especially when there's like something. What is it?
The harp.
What? Yeah, when you get the harp. Thank you. Yeah.
And it turns every enemy on screen into a collectible red hammer. And this whole time I'm like, what are these things? They kind of look like keys. But so then when you get to the fortress stage, there are these centurion statues that, because the story is that Medusa has turned all of Palatina's warriors into stone. And so you find them in the fortress and you use your hammer to free them and they just fly off. But then in the boss fights, they appear 3 at a time and fight alongside you. And they all die in one hit, but you can have going into the boss fights, I usually had 24 centurions in reserve. And it really felt like this epic battle. Like I'm getting kind of goosebumps describing it because it's me and my army taking on the Cerberus.
Yeah.
It's dope and also totally skippable. You're not forced to unlock the Centurions, but if you want to take your time through the fortress and be like, I'm going to explore every room and and get all the backup I can for the boss fight, that is totally a valid strategy. Dex, did you ever get to a boss fight?
I think just the first one. I definitely ran up against it a few times, and I was able to use the save state feature that the NES Classic had. I definitely did not when at the Kitty City. I don't know if I ever made it past the first stage there, but because I don't know if we mentioned, but with the side scrolling and the vertical scrolling ratchets so that if you fall below where you've gotten, that's an instant death, which it was a common way for me, dying. I think for most players dying, but I do know that there is the little feather power up that you're able to purchase later on, and that gives you a second chance if you were to fall.
Well, I think that's a great transition to Joy-Cons, unless anyone wants to praise game a bit more, because I think, Mike, a big issue you have is that you can't fly for most of this game.
I don't necessarily mind that I can't fly. I fall a lot is a related but different problem.
Falling with style.
There you go. Keeps coming up. I just feel like you show a guy with the wings on the box, give me a double jump, you know what I mean? And again, I feel like double jumping hadn't really entered the gaming conversation at this
not really
point in game history, but we also covered Flicky, which is a game where you play as a bird that can't fly, and it's just kind of leaves a weird taste in the mouth, to have a game where flight is so limited, except as I think Dex just mentioned, the feather power up. When you fall to your death, if you have the angel's feather, Pit will rise up, and for a few glorious seconds, you get to fly wherever you want. And it's like, oh, this is really fun. Oh, never mind. Back on the ground. I am earthbound once again. And it's like there are moments I considered suiciding just to have the fun of flying around. I'm like, that's not a good mechanic then, I don't think.
And I think an issue with that isn't strictly you can't fly and you have wings, but also that the controls. I think I saw something that said it always kind of feels like you're on ice.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole lot of like, I have to land precisely, and I'm not. And there is the checkpoint system, but like that is on a stage by stage basis. And those are very far apart, especially where if there's a lot of vertical, there's a lot of spots to fall.
Mhm.
It's not as bad as Ice Climbers, but it has a similar kind of physics to it. Like you almost drop like a rock.
And any game that's gonna basically put a death pit under a pit room. It's a pit room. Every room is a pit room. And there's no escaping it. There's no Sing to save us. I think this game commits a cardinal sin of game design, which is we're gonna let you use your cool weapons, but only if you have enough health. So at full health you can use all three of your weapons, and then at a third of your health you can use one. And it's just like the one that makes the least sense to me is that one of them is a force field, a really cool force field where you surround yourself with these spinning diamonds that just dice enemies that get close to you. So I can only protect myself if I don't need to. Like what?
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
Right? It's just it's a neat idea, but so many of these old games Mike and I are playing through, it's just like if I wasn't rewinding to keep my health up full, I don't know if I would have as much fun as I'm having with them.
I think it does also suffer a little bit visually. And I don't want to knock it too much because it was more just where the limitations were at the time, that the plain black backgrounds. And I think 3DS that they redid this. And that just has like sort of like a scrolling backdrop to them. And it is just one of those deals where, especially when you're seeing the same screens over and over, and it's just these platforms in front of black.
Mhm.
It's a bit limited for what they could do at the time. Like the Super Mario Brothers has the same thing, where when you go underground, it's just a black void behind you. And then even by the time of the SNES, they were able to put in images behind it.
Yeah. And I think that contributes to the weird feel of the levels to me. Like a Mario level feels so well paced and well designed, and there's a clear like arc to it. And some of these I'm like, oh, there's the exit. I didn't really expect it to be coming up, and it just doesn't have the sense of place that I think some of the better side scrollers do. But I don't know. I still like really enjoyed it overall. Josh.
I would say the two biggest cons for me are the way they try to teach you the gameplay mechanics is clunky. Where like if you play like Super Mario Brothers, like there's a running joke for a while. I don't know if anyone's actually done the research on this to test it, but like the most deadly enemy in all of video games is that first Goomba in Mario Brothers, because when you're first learning how to play, you're always going to get killed by it, right? I mean, hell, even if you do know how to play, sometimes you still get killed by it because you're messing around and whatnot. So, the original Mario though, they give you something where you have to like you have to dodge the first Goomba. They have light jumping spots for you to. They show you like the coin blocks, so it teaches you how to use like what the coin blocks can do. And if you take the time and try to hit every single one because you're still just trying to figure out this game, then you might see the mushroom and then you'll get the power up. Kid Icarus doesn't really do a good job of teaching you the mechanics in that first little bit. The platforms are automatically fairly tricky to jump. When you switch from one side of the screen to the other, I think that's actually really well done, where they like you can clearly see what you have to do next. And I like that. But I think like after that first segment, it's almost like okay, we showed you how to jump and we showed you how to switch sides of the screen. Good luck. That's all we're going to show you. We're not going to give you practice on this. We're not going to give you safe places to fail on this, like Mario does. Because even if you die to that Goomba, you're right there. It's not like you lost a lot of progress, right? So this one I feel like the way they try to teach you the mechanics is they don't. They show you the basics of jumping and warping the screen, and then obviously you can attack but the enemies on the screen are so like their movement patterns do not work well with your attack movements at all. So you really have to, honestly, it feels like you're getting lucky more than you're doing things by skill when you're taking enemies out, with the exception of the snakes that drop down right away. Like those guys are obviously easy to take out, but like anything that flies, you're just hoping that you're at a good spot, right? And then you have one of the first special enemies, the Reapers, which they have line of sight. It's kind of cool. It's like if they see you, they'll attack you, but if they don't see you, then you can dodge it, or then they don't bother. Like they don't even mess with you. You can even shoot them, and as long as they still don't see you, they're not going to do anything. And I think what's frustrating about that is that that's pretty inventive for the time. Like line of sight on an enemy, that's pretty new if you're thinking 1987, right? But then if they do see you, it's one of the most abhorrent sections of the game where the little Reapers come down and circle you, and they will keep spawning until you either take out the big Reaper or you despawn them by moving up high enough. And even then, they will still be there on screen until you take them out. So it's just that they stop spawning once you get rid of the big Reaper off the screen. So there's cool ideas in this, but I think in terms of execution, which is why I couldn't get far into the game. I admittedly, I'm also playing a bunch of other stuff for my own show, so I didn't prioritize playing it as much as I would have if I was covering it like in a full on deep dive. But like, I shouldn't say that. If I was earnestly trying to get through this all, but I had like 6 other games. I'm sorry. I made it sound like I didn't care enough about your show to
don't feel obligated. This is my show, and I didn't get far in it. So like, don't feel obligated here.
That's why I always ask, like, do you need me to beat the game? Because then I can give you a realistic timetable of when I could beat it, type of thing. But in any case, that's neither here nor there. But like, it doesn't do a great job of teaching you its mechanics. It does bare bones, but then they don't really give you good ways to test your skills as the game goes on. So that's my biggest cons with it. It's the fact that unfortunately they took big swings, and the swings they took were interesting, just not always well implemented. And not to turn a con into a pro, but like, I do think that this was, I still am happy they took these swings, because this was new, right? Like this type of gameplay was new to North Americans when we first experienced, right? And it was a completely new experience for people just trying this out. So I admire them for taking the swings that they did. They don't work overall, in my opinion, especially when you have enemies like Eggplant Wizard, where you get turned into the eggplant and you're just this walking eggplant with legs. I love the visual of that so much. And you have to, like you mentioned before, Jaymo, go to the hospital. It just kills the time, and then you have to go all the way back. Also with the exploring the dungeons, how you don't, like, when you get the map, you still can't see where you are on the map until you get the pencil. You buy a pencil from the shop, so that way then you can follow, they'll tell you where you're at.
Well, not quite. You need to find the map, then you need to find the pencil to make marks on the map, and then you need the torch to know where on the map you are.
Oh my god.
So it's just like, I get they're going for like an immersion thing, but it felt like mean-spirited. And also the fact that, the fortress that precedes every boss fight, they take away all your weapons, and now you're back to the short little bow, and it's like, I get it. They want you to unlock the Centurions so that, you are exploring the fortress, and they're trying to make the boss fight harder. And to the game's credit, once you beat the boss, you get your weapons back. But it was just like, the weapons make this so much more fun. Pitt's bow, or excuse me, his arrows flying all the way across the screen instead of 2 feet in front of him, huge. The fireball making your hitbox bigger, huge. The force field just dicing anything that flies at you. This game's most fun moments, I think most people don't get to see, and I think that's a con. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dex, anything else to get off your chest before we render our verdict?
I don't think so, because I was about to go into some stuff that sounds probably more apt for the verdict section, actually.
The other thing, and again, I think this reflects them pushing what they thought they could get to work, was actually with the many Reapers coming on stage. I actually hit a spot where I was getting like very noticeable slowdown on the game because suddenly I've got like 10 enemies on screen, and it was almost unplayable until either I could kill them or more likely they killed me. And it was just that spot where the game couldn't handle it. And it is slightly interesting that the emulation has that slowdown as well. Because you'd think it might not, but it does. And it kind of reminds me of the same thing like Super Mario Brothers. If you have like 6 enemies where they start like alternating flashing, because it's just like it hit a limit. So that was an unexpected extra thing where not only was it hard to figure out where the flying things are going to be to kill them, but like my response time started dropping, or the game's response time to me started dropping.
I feel like there's a long history of me pretending to know how technology works. So I'm gonna take another crack at it, Mike, because you're right. It is weird that on the stronger software, the lag still happens. But doesn't that mean that that slowdown was programmed into the game to like prevent a crash, right?
No,
No,
it's
see?
so when you emulate a game, the software is programmed to behave the way an NES would. So the limitations of the NES are programmed into that emulator. Now, obviously, people can get rid of that if you know how to code, and I don't freaking know how to do that.
But it takes work.
But so yeah, with emulators, it's based off how the code was written for it. So if it's authentic to the NES, it's going to have still that kind of slow down and having to flash sprites because it can't render everything all at once. So it has to literally cycle through sprites so rapidly that it prevents or it slows down. But yeah, that's where it comes from.
That makes sense. Well, and also just justice for anyone who played this on 3DS. One last Joy-Con. It's not mine, but I'm sure people were hurt by this. As we mentioned, you can get better and better endings, and the way you achieve that is by having a highly statted pit at the end of the game. So, for example, if you unlock all of your strength stats, the ending will get a little better. If you get full health bar, the ending gets a little better. And the easiest way to achieve this is to play the game again. After you beat the game, it restarts at level 1, but you keep all your stats, unless you do the 3DS version, which resets you back to 0. So those poor people, to see the good ending, it's almost impossible on one run through. So that must have been super frustrating. Now we have arrived at the moment of truth. We've covered the Joy Pros, the Joy Cons, and every bit in between. So it's time to declare the game from today's episode as a NintenDO or a NintenDON'T. Let's throw it to our guests. Josh from the Still Loading podcast. What do you say?
Well, so I saw in the outline that Mike sent me that you can deviate a little bit from do or don't, right? So if you'll allow me this, I say Nintendo context, meaning this game within the context in which it came out is a Nintendo. It is one of the better NES games for the time it came out. And it's very much worth it from that perspective. If you are playing it just hoping for a modern style game, like even slightly modern, I'm not, like some games are made with a retro feel, then no. That's why I say intent context. It depends on what you're looking to get out of the game. If you're looking from it to, like, if you're trying to like play it to understand the context in which the time it came out and what the gaming landscape was like in 1987, absolutely, it's worth your playthrough. If you're doing this because you're just curious and you're not, I'm not always into retro games, but I like to see where things come from, it might not be your cup of tea. So Nintendo context, it would be my vote. If you're pressing me and I need to give an answer, it'd be Nintendo, but more accurately, it'd be Nintendo context.
Well, you're big into history, so for you, it's a yes.
Yes, yeah.
Dex, how about you?
Yeah, I have to say Nintendo as well. Just from like, Nintendo doesn't mean Nintendo finish. It just means
yeah.
And I do think that it is worth playing because it is, it's got the quality, Nintendo seal of quality for a reason. You can tell what they were going for.
Technically, every game had that seal of quality, so I don't know how accurate that is.
We don't talk about that. But in all seriousness, like it's you could tell what they were trying to do from the level design to the fun that they were implementing with some of those enemies and all of that. And what I've decided, my analogy for this game is, if you've ever had a good TV show that you just keep falling off from until you're watching it again, and then you're like, oh man, I love this show. But unless you're actively watching it, you don't have the urge to keep watching it. Does that make sense? Like, there are some TV shows that I'm like that with, where if there's not someone with me that's like, oh, we need to watch the next episode, I just have no urge to watch it. But while I'm watching it, I'm like, I like this show a lot. Kid Icarus is kind of like that for me. When I'm playing Kid Icarus, I'm really enjoying myself, even if it's beating me up and I'm not making progress. I can still see the mistakes I'm making. I can see what the game is trying to get me to do, and I'm enjoying that aspect of it. But when I'm not playing Kid Icarus, I'm never like, boy, I could go for some more Kid Icarus. That's kind of where I'm leaning on this. Like, I do think people should play this, but at the same time, I totally get it if you do not like this game.
I think that's true for a lot of old hard games. It's like, it doesn't call to you, but while you're in there, it's like, this has got some tricks. Mike, you had a rough time with it. Where are you landing?
I gotta say, Josh's Nintendo context is a darn tempting category.
I don't know if I like it. I don't like it.
I think
you can find a better pun.
I think if push comes to... No, he doesn't want to do that. I tried a Nintendo Virtual Boy. He was very unhappy when I did that on a different episode.
Famicontext.
Famicontext. There you go. That's
5 seconds, Mike. 5 seconds.
That's the winner.
Famicontext. I love that.
Yeah, because I think like if push comes to shove for me, I think ultimately I'd lean NintenDON'T. I think the interesting stuff in there I think you don't get a taste of it until you get further in than was a satisfying point to get to.
It's definitely one of the weirder retro Nintendo titles, but I think it has enough strange ideas that's worth a look. It got lambasted on release for being too hard. That was Mike's experience. That's what you guys have all mentioned. So Nintendo Switch Online might be one of the best ways to give it a try, because the ability to rewind takes a lot of that bitter edge off and let me kind of appreciate the journey and get the weapons and kind of, get the ending I liked.
The save states actually would do that too.
Save states too, yeah. So for all it has to offer, for me, Kid Icarus is a NintenDO'Icus. Well,
I just realized we've gone this whole episode without explaining where this Icus thing is coming from.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, because people are wondering. Sure.
I'll keep it brief. For those who have not watched Captain N, the Game Master, Kid Icarus, aka Pit, in real life or real game, they give him a speech impediment. I don't know how else to describe it.
Accent.
Where he just adds Icus to things. So for example, the main character of Captain N, the kid who gets sucked into Videoland, his name is Kevin, and Kid Icarus refers to him as Kevinicus sometimes, and other things like that. So he just adds Icus to words that kind of work with it. I don't know. It's very strange. It's Strangeicus.
It's Strangeicus, yeah. And I say accent, not speech impediment, because when you actually go to his land, the other people from Mount Icarus also do it. So I'm like, okay, this is the kind of world building I like a kiss.
I think it'd be under dialect rather than accent.
There you go, dialect.
There you go,
Dialecticus.
Well, guys, we're gonna call that game over for today. The final score for Kid Icarus on the NES is a Nintendo. And Captain N, where did we land on it? Nintendo or don't, you guys? I feel like you're all Nintendo for Captain N.
Yeah.
Nintendo, watch it ironically so you don't hate yourself.
I can't make up a pun for that one.
No, I was trying to just make it too long so that way I wouldn't come up with a crappy pun. Yeah, it's Captain N's a wild show. If you want to watch something that's so bad it's good, if that's your type of if that's your type of jam, I don't know, worth checking out for that. Like, there's a lot of wild stuff that happens in that show that I can't understand, and it's amazing for that.
And it's on YouTube.
Yes, it's all on YouTube. And if you want to peek into a world before everything had brand people that were like, you can't do that because of Mario has to be this tall and he has to have this shape and he has to use this model. And like, if you want to live in a world or peek into a world before we had all of that, Captain N is the place to go. I give it a Nintendo. What a concept, as Kevin would say.
as Kevin would say from the show. What a concept.
Beautiful.
What a joy
boys.
concept.
There we go. Well, thank you so much for chopping it up with us today. And you know what? You barely cussed. So good job.
I kept it PG for y'all.
Before you go, why don't you remind our listeners where they can find your mythic body of work?
Well, it's a lot less family friendly over on the Still Loading podcast. I shouldn't say a lot. I swearing does happen frequently. Anyway, yes, the Still Loading podcast, you can find it on pretty much any podcasting app you use: YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. I've been at it for over 10 years. There's over 300 episodes, lots of content for you to choose from. When is this episode coming out of curiosity? Do you have like a relative release date?
This one is set to drop on May 21st.
May. Okay, so then I have no idea what I'll be doing in May. I was going to see. I plan pretty far out, but I like to ask. I guess the last thing I have done that I know is happening is like it'll be out. It starts in April and ends in May. I'm doing a Punch a Nazi month, which features games all about punching Nazis, for no topical reason whatsoever.
No. Why in 2025?
Nothing topical is happening that would inspire this series. And yeah, so I'm covering a bunch of games all about punching Nazis. But I do lots of stuff over the Still Loading podcast, interviews with people in the industry, whether it's voice actors or game designers. I do deep dives on individual games, cartoon retrospectives, hence the Captain N series. And the last thing I'll shout out, because otherwise I won't stop talking, is the Final Fantasy Draft. I do weird ideas like that, where if you like Final Fantasy, it's like Final Fantasy mixed with fantasy sports, but you don't have to know anything about fantasy sports to enjoy the episode. It is just a fun way to discuss lots of things about Final Fantasy. And it's where my guests come on and they try to draft their ideal Final Fantasy game based off a series of criteria and what's in the draft pool and whatnot. So we've had people where you would have, Sephiroth being the villain with Kefka as the secondary villain. Like, you can do crazy stuff like that with a Final Fantasy IX soundtrack and a battle system from Final Fantasy One. It goes crazy. So that's kind of like all a little sample of all the stuff I do over at the Still Loading podcast.
That sounds awesome. Dex, I know you also collabed with Josh on a bunch of Captain N episodes. Is there anything else that you specifically wanted to plug?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on any of the social medias out there just by searching my name, DexterMorrill, usually sharing some of my artwork. As I mentioned previously, I'm also a teacher, so I like to share some of my students' artwork out there as well. So you can check that out. But more relevant to your audience, I'm also the cover artist for Old School Gamer magazine. So if you read that, or if you've ever seen that or subscribed to that, that's my artwork you're seeing there. I also do a lot of the promotional artwork for the Retro World Expo in Connecticut. Got some friends I used to work with that put that show on. It's a good show. And I try to help them out with the artwork and stuff as well. But yeah, and if it's May, then I'm probably sharing some of my students' final projects right around now.
That's awesome. Yeah, my student just gave me a Pikachu Mr. Strauss drawings. I'm like, heck yeah. That's a special part of being a teacher, isn't it?
And I just realized, because you mentioned social media, Dex, if anyone wants to follow me on social media, I'm mainly on Blue Sky and Instagram at StillLoadingPod.
Beautiful. Well, guys, that all sounds excellent. Everyone join us next time when we'll be returning to Hyrule for our first ever 3D open world game, The Legend of Zelda, The Ocarina of Time. It's going to be an all-timer, that's for sure. Also, don't forget to visit www.theoldswitcheroo.com. There you can find links to our Spotify, our YouTube, our Instagram, and all the social medias you can shake a joystick at. You can even leave an old-timey voicemail, meaning we'd literally love to hear from you. Or even better, join the fun on our Discord server where you can talk games, play games, and even make a friend or two. Big thanks to Crystal Fields for our incredible intro song, and thank you, dear listener, for liking, commenting, subscribing, reviewing, and playing along with us every step of the way. This has been the Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Game on, everyone.
that also is the episode with the booby-trapped phone.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Hello, booby. This is a trap, and then just a fist comes out of the phone and punches him.